So clicker training we can use to teach things like sit, down, roll over, whatever it is. Anything like that you can use to teach. We do focus on positive behaviors with clicker training. So we're not going to click for behaviors that we don't like. It really just means I like what you just did. That doesn't mean that we can't tell a dog we don't like something though, because when they don't earn that click, most dogs start to figure that out and go, oh, maybe I should try this instead to earn that click, all right? It allows us to use both lure reward training and shaping. So the difference between lure reward and shaping, lure reward is what most people are familiar with. So lure reward is taking a treat and putting it at the dog's nose and lifting it up so the dog looks up and sits. And then you give the dog the treat. So you've lured it into the position with the treat and then given it as the reward. Shaping is the process of marking and rewarding behaviors as they get closer and closer and closer to what you want. So that whole marking and rewarding, a lot harder to do if you're only rewarding, if you're not marking. So it makes shaping a lot easier. Shaping is easier with some behaviors than with others, and it kind of allows dogs to think. So I've got some video that I'll show that goes over how you can shape behaviors with dogs. We talk about it a little bit in class. We can also do problem behavior modification with clicker training. So I gave you guys the example of working with a dog that's aggressive or reactive towards another dog. A whole variety of things that you could do with that. Tricks, lots and lots of tricks can be taught. That's one thing that I go over with owners as well in classes, is that there's really no difference to your dog between an obedience command and a trick. They don't know the difference. Some owners kind of, you know, we have this mindset of dogs should learn this and that. Yes, there are some things they should learn that makes life a lot easier and so on. But for the most part, as long as you're teaching your dog things, they don't know that they just learned, you know, how to wave instead of how to lie down. They don't care. So if the owners are having fun with it, go with it. Complex and chain behaviors, a lot easier with clicker training because you're identifying those exact moments. A lot of service dogs are now being trained with clicker training. Dogs that are in movies, film, that kind of stuff, a lot of those really kind of complicated behaviors that you see, a lot of those are clicker trained as well, probably long before we were doing it in little obedience classes and so forth.
Mary, are you going to go over loading the clicker?
Okay. Yep. Can we start this one? Sure, go ahead. Do you have the speakers turned on? Mm-hmm. Okay. Hard to know because there's not a ton of sound in the background, but
she didn't hear you, Peter.
You guys hear that? That's about all you're going to hear, but talking about clicker training, hearing the click is probably pretty important.
So she was touching it at first.
Yeah, so initially we're marking and rewarding for just touching it with her nose. And then, yeah, she'll try a lot of things. And then to get her to work on putting her mouth on it to actually pick it up, I'll take a lick in the beginning. Because in shaping, I'm looking for anything that gets me closer to the end result. Okay? I also can go forwards and backwards a little bit. So she got really into it with her foot there, so I backed off and went for just touching it with her nose again. That's one of the nice things about shaping, is that you can kind of move around depending on how the dog is doing.
You're not saying a word.
I'm not saying a word. Huh? This little button is telling her. Yep, telling her everything that she needs to know. Yeah, and this is.
What kind of a time frame was that?
This is all one video. There's one point where we go from day 1 to day 2, and it's marked here in the video. This is all, the only interruptions were actually just to put in the video. Yeah.
Genius. Wow.
It happens fast.
No.
There you go.
I think that's usually when owners get sold, is when they see how fast it happens.
Yeah, it's really fast.
Yeah.
Look at her just know what to do. It's amazing.
Yeah.
she's working for her dog food.
Yeah.
He's already clicked before she,
Yeah. So clicker training marks that exact moment. If you click too late, you're marking when she's dropping it.
You're trying to do it
when
when
she's picking it up.
Oh.
There it is. What was the payoff?
See, I can see myself. Missed it. One thing I tell owners though is it's okay to make a mistake, just don't make the same exact mistake 20 times in a row.
Right, because then they're going to think that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, she did it. Mm-hmm. We're all so excited.
She's dragging it out so she can get more food.
So that was one exercise.
She totally knows how to do it. She's working with it. Okay,
So anytime I go, one day to the next or one training session to the next, I start back a ways. I don't have to start at the very beginning again, and we go faster, but you don't try to start right where you began. So as they progress further along, I can be more specific about what I click for. So in the beginning, I would have clicked for any action towards the basket. But now I'm trying to let her know, no, you have to get the handle, not just the basket itself. And that's the thing about a dog that's trained with shaping is they start thinking.
What else can I do? Yeah.
I love
She's dragged the basket way off back here. At this point, she was picking it up and carrying it, so I was rewarding her for more specific behavior. She wasn't giving it to me, so she wasn't earning that click.
Oh.
It's so sad.
How about this? What about this?
Throwing out.
She's like, come on, here's everything I know. Oh, what about if I...
Yeah.
So we just switched to the next video now.
Have you tried this with cats?
I don't do cats.
But it would work, though.
It is absolutely doable with cats.
Yeah.
Cats are frequently clicker trained.
I've
Not
got-
frequently.
You can do it.
I
Compared.
taught both of my cats to jump through a hula hoop, which is food. So.
Yep.
You can do all sorts of tricks. And so can Jasmine's cat.
Yeah.
Cat sits up on his back legs when you help with it.
Yep.
pretty.
Horses.
Wow.
I was over at her house and was like,
So on
no way.
hers,
That day
we're
we
gonna
watched that
go.
movie.
Let's see. We're gonna go through part of it.
Okay.
And not all of it, because this is a long one. So this is a board and train dog that I had with me just for 2 weeks. Not necessarily a normal part of a board and train, but she was young and energetic and eager to learn some stuff. So we started with targeting, which is teaching a dog just to go to an object and touch it either with their feet or their nose. It is an exercise that I'll often teach in basic obedience, just to introduce the concept of shaping. So we started with just targeting this little plastic lid that was on the ground. Targeting I like because it's really basic to get the concept of shaping. So this idea of we start by clicking when your dog looks in the direction of the target and looks again in the direction of the target. And eventually they start to figure out, something over here is getting me a click and a treat. And then they'll start going, well, what is it? And then maybe they lean towards the target. And then you start tightening up, okay, well, I'm not going to click you just for leaning towards it. So what I did with her is then I worked towards picking up the target, which is different for her than the target being on the ground. I want to make sure that she can still do it now, that she's actually targeting it in the air and not just going for something on the ground. So my end goal here is to teach her to close a cabinet door with her nose. Okay? So if you want to skip through, there's a lot in the middle. But this is one training session across 10 minutes. Let's skip through to 8 minutes and 15 seconds if you can.
Pretty soon you could teach them to just like clean your house and everything. Does that not like laundry?
We'll get to that. That's good. So we start with having the target near the cabinet door, getting her to the idea of going to the cabinet door. And in her case, then I just removed it and started targeting her towards the door. Sometimes I'll start hiding the target. But this I think the whole video is just over 9 minutes. She's now gone from targeting this plastic lid.
She knows to do it.
Wow. And I've started actually adding the word. You noticed how quiet I was. There's no point in adding the command or the cue until the dog is actually doing what I want, right? They only learn. Push it? Yeah, I'm telling them push it.
Can you read it?
Not the most original thing.
I was looking at that.
Owners love this trick because this is like kind of a great cocktail party trick.
Yeah.
Like nobody else's dog knows how to close a cabinet door with their nose.
They're always opening them to get what's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rhino and Brew just would have chewed up the plastic lid on the floor.
Target wrestled over it.
Yeah. So we can go to the next video. I think there were 3 on this slide here.
So, Mary, I know that you're supposed to give them the treat as fast as you can when you're doing the clicker. So as long as you get the click and then get that food down and they see it, is that close enough? Because it's usually like a second or two, like click and drop.
It's fine. And actually there should be a second or 2.
Okay.
What happens is, and if you'll wait just a second before starting the next video.
Sure.
Yeah. What happens is if you click and treat at the exact same time, the click isn't predictive of the food. Okay, so we want the click to say to the dog, the food is coming. And if we click and feed at the same exact moment, the click is just something that happens when you're eating. It doesn't mean that food is coming. So we actually do want a little bit of a delay. I ask people to click and then reach down and feed their dog. So right from the beginning, you're looking at a second or 2.
Okay.
Part of the benefit of clicker training is once they know what this sound means, you actually get some pretty good leeway. A click not only acts as a marker, but it also acts as what's called a bridge. So it allows us to extend the amount of time between when they hear that sound and when they get fed. We've captured the moment that they've done it right, and now we have a little bit of a gap. So dolphins are a good example of that. Remember I talked about that they wouldn't leave the platform unless they knew that that reward was coming? So they can shape behavior of, hey, dolphin, you're at the platform, I'm going to blow the whistle, you get a fish. Well, now I want you to back off, so when you swim a little bit away, I'll blow the whistle, you get the fish. Further and further away until you're out in the pool. And then they can teach things like jumping up and touching the ball, only because once they've jumped and touched that ball, they hear the whistle, they know, oh, now I can swim back and get my fish. They know they're going to be rewarded. It's a wonderful question. Yeah.
That, like the marking training, if you have 2 dogs in a household, do you just suggest separating and doing it one by one? Because that would be hard to do.
Yes, because if you're working with both dogs and you click, you're really marking an exact moment.
Yeah.
You do have options with it though. One is put one dog up and work with the other dog. Another is you can use a different click sound for one dog and then the other. So there are different clickers available, so you can, it takes a lot of brain power. It's pretty hard to train 2 dogs at one moment anyway and get it right to the extent of really perfecting a behavior. That said, in puppy class, we're all clicking, and yet they still learn. They're incredibly smart at knowing what's going on with them, and they pay attention to what their owner is doing and when they're being clicked for. So they can learn that. So the basics of clicker training, that first thing we talked about with Pavlov, you're teaching the association. So before this does anything for the dog, we kind of have to program it, so to speak. And so we do that by one of 3 ways. So we can just click and feed, right? Same as Pavlov. Dog hears a sound, dog eats food. That's one way. The second way is we can work with something that they already know. Even puppies coming to puppy class usually already know how to sit, okay? So we can teach it by saying, hey, puppy, sit. They sit, we click and give them a treat. So they can learn it that way as well. The third way that they can learn it is with a new thing. So say they don't know how to lie down. You can start getting the puppy to lie down, clicking when they're down and giving them the treat. They can learn it that way. They won't get the full benefit from the clicker in learning that particular exercise, but you're doing two things at once, okay? What I'll usually do is I'll tell people, do it all three ways. You don't have to pick one and go with it. You can do it all three ways. And so I just get people using them right off the bat. We start using them in the very first class. The way that it works is always the dog does the behavior, then you click, then they get the treat. All right, that goes back to that, they're not gonna get hooked on it because we're not getting behavior by the clicker. So we look for getting the puppy to sit, if that's what we're trying to train, we're looking for that bottom to touch the ground or close to it if we're shaping the behavior, then we click, and then we give them the treat. All right, we talked about that little pause in between so that they know the click is predicting the treat. There are a few rules that I go over with clicker training. We only click once and then give a treat. Some people really want to. If it works once, it must be better multiple times. It's probably people with addictive personalities or something. One click and then we feed. And if they do something, we're clicking once for it. Okay? Any click is going to end the behavior. So if the dog lies down and you click and the dog gets up, they still get their treat. They still did it. Okay? The click ends the behavior. The next thing is that if you click, they get a treat. So that lying down, they laid down, but then they got up as soon as you click. They still get the treat. You thought the dog was going to lie down and they saw something and turned around and got up instead. And oops, you click. They still get the treat. Okay? It's more important to keep the consistency of the clicker than it is to reward a mistake. All right? The biggest one that I see there is people working on getting a dog to not jump, and at the last second the dog jumps and they click by mistake. You still give the dog the reward, but that doesn't mean you have to feed him when he's in the air. Drop the treat on the ground, and so then they're eating off the ground. Okay? And then another one, I think it's kind of this day and age. Look at me here with this. It's not a remote. People really want to, aim it at their. And this is scary. Okay, it may not be loud up here, but right next to their ear, aimed at them is a little scary.
Make them do it.
Yeah, we wouldn't have to talk about it if nobody had ever tried it. And then what I try to get people to think about as they're learning what clicker training is all about is to kind of think of the clicker like a camera. So you see what you like, you click, you take a picture of it. That's what the click is marking. So you wanted that dog to sit instead of jumping, that's what you're clicking for. Now I do give more guidelines than that because otherwise people go home and they just, I just click for everything and they don't know quite what they're doing. To an extent that could work, but they do have to learn certain behaviors out of it. But that kind of concept of taking a picture of what you like. So you like that sit, that's when you click, and then you feed them for it. Okay? And then as they learn something, so puppies will learn sit in class, we'll start fading the use of the clicker. Alright? And so rather than continuing to click and just not feeding, because that's against the rules, we just don't click every time they sit. And then we start rewarding them randomly, and then, just here and there for something like sit.